The battle began at exactly 14:27 Earth Standard Time, and it ended at 14:31. But those 4 minutes changed the galaxy forever. High Archon Velnoth gave the order to fire from his command ship, a massive crystal dreadnought that had destroyed entire civilizations. Around him, 10,000 ships from dozens of species opened fire simultaneously. The space around Earth lit up with enough energy to crack a planet in half. But the Taeguk did not return fire. Instead, Dr. Park Minji activated something the Keepers had called the Harmony Protocol. The purple-gold light that surrounded the human ship began to spread outward like ripples in a pond, touching each attacking vessel with gentle, irresistible force. Admiral Quextar watched in horror as his flagship's main weapons began to change. The massive plasma cannons that had leveled cities started to reshape themselves, metal flowing like water, energy conduits rearranging their patterns. Within seconds, his weapons of destruction had become medical scanners, capable of healing injuries at the cellular level. "What's happening to my ship?" he roared at his crew. Before anyone could answer, the Taeguk's voice filled every mind in the fleet. It was Captain Do-hyun, but his thoughts carried harmonies of his entire crew, creating a symphony of human consciousness that was both alien and familiar. "You came here to demonstrate power through destruction," the voice said. "We will demonstrate power through creation. Every weapon you brought to kill us will become a tool to save lives. Every ship designed for war will become a vessel of peace." Across the vast fleet, the transformation continued. Vorthak dreadnoughts found their hull-crushing rams turning into asteroid miners, capable of extracting resources from dead worlds and turning them into gardens. Sithric battlecruisers discovered their planet-cracking main guns had become terraforming arrays, ready to make barren worlds bloom with life. The Zelani Collective's bioships, already partially alive, began to sing with joy as their weapon systems became healing centers that could cure any disease or repair any injury. Even the mysterious Phantom Fleet found their dimension tearing, weapons replaced with portals that could connect distant worlds in peace instead of war. Commander Park Tae-hyung stood on the Taeguk's bridge, coordinating the peaceful conversion of the enemy fleet. His fingers danced through holographic displays that showed the status of each transformed ship. "Captain, the Umbral Confederation. Vessels are trying to retreat to their shadow dimension," he reported. "Should we let them go?" Captain Do-hyun shook his head. "No one leaves unchanged, Tae-hyung. They came here to destroy us. They'll leave as builders." The shadow ships found their escape routes blocked by barriers of crystallized time. One by one, their cloaking devices and dimensional drives were replaced with systems that could make invisible things visible, bringing light to dark places and hope to desperate civilizations. On his command ship, High Archon Velnoth felt something he hadn't experienced in over 1,000 years of conquest: fear. His crystalline form, which had survived the destruction of stars, began to crack under the pressure of what he was witnessing. "This is impossible," he whispered to Admiral Quextar. "No species should have this power. The natural order." "The natural order is changing," Quextar replied, and there was something like wonder in his voice. He was watching his tactical displays, as thousands of his ships were transformed from instruments of death into tools of life. Maybe it needed to change. Science officer Bae Ji-won made a discovery that would reshape physics textbooks across the galaxy. As she analyzed the Keeper technology at work, she realized it wasn't just changing the ships. It was rewriting the ADO, fundamental laws of physics in local space, making the impossible not only possible but inevitable. "Captain," she reported with excitement, "the Harmony Protocol isn't just using advanced technology. It's teaching the universe new rules. Weapons become tools because, in this space, destruction without purpose can't exist. War becomes peace because conflict without understanding has no meaning." Engineer Kim Jae-won looked up from his console with wide eyes. "The Keepers didn't just leave us technology. They left us a way to upgrade reality itself." The transformation was complete in 4 minutes, but the implications would take generations to understand. 10,000 warships designed for conquest now carried the power to heal worlds, feed populations, and connect distant civilizations in friendship rather than fear. Captain Do-hyun opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. "Honored beings, from across the galaxy, His voice carried clearly to every ship. "You came here to destroy us because you feared what we had learned, but we do not wish to be your rulers. We wish to be your teachers." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle across the assembled fleet. "The Keepers warned us of something coming from beyond our galaxy. Entities that consume entire civilizations like fire consumes grass. Alone, none of us can survive what's approaching. But together, with the right tools and understanding, we can become something those entities have never encountered before." High Archon Velnoth's ancient pride warred with the evidence before his eyes. His dreadnought, once a symbol of Sithric dominance, now hummed with systems that could turn dead worlds into paradises. Despite himself, he was beginning to understand the appeal. "And if we refuse your teachings?" he asked. Dr. Park Minji's voice joined the conversation, warm but firm. "Then you refuse. But your ships will carry tools of creation wherever they go. Your weapons will heal instead of harm. Your soldiers will build instead of destroy. The choice of how to use these gifts is yours, but the gifts themselves cannot be unchanged." Admiral Quickstar made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He opened a channel to his own fleet. "All Vorthak vessels, stand down. We will listen to what the humans have to teach us." It was the first crack in the old order, but not the last. Across the fleet, other commanders began to voice their willingness to learn. The Zalani Collective's bioships pulsed with excitement. Several of the smaller species representatives eagerly requested immediate lessons in Keeper technology. But not everyone was ready to accept the new reality. The Sithric hegemony's other archons began planning resistance. The Phantom Fleet's commanders retreated into their shadow dimension to regroup. And in the deepest, darkest corners of the galaxy, ancient powers that had ruled through fear and oppression began to plan their response to humanity's challenge. Captain Do-hyun sensed their resistance through the quantum consciousness network that connected all enhanced humans. He stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by his transformed crew, and made a decision that would reshape the galaxy. "It's time for the next phase," he told Dr. Park. "Send word to every human colony, every Earth ship, every person who carries our DNA. The Keeper's gift isn't just for one ship or one crew, it's for all of humanity." "And then?" she asked. Do-hyun smiled, and in that expression was both the chaos and hope that made humans unique in the galaxy. "Then we teach the galaxy that cooperation isn't just better than conquest. In the face of what's coming, it's the only way any of us will survive." The real transformation was just beginning. The Taeguk floated in Earth's orbit like a dream made real. Captain Do-hyun stood in his quarters, staring out at the blue marble that was humanity's home. But his mind was 200 years in the past, remembering the day everything changed. Dr. Park Minji entered quietly, her footsteps making no sound on the strange material that formed the ship's floor. The metal seemed to respond to her presence, glowing softly under her feet. "The Earth authorities want to board us," she said. "They're calling us heroes and miracles. They don't understand what we've become." Do-hyun turned from the window. In the light, his face showed the weight of centuries, even though his body looked the same age as when they had left. "Tell me, Minji, do you remember the moment we realized we weren't coming home?" She sat down on a chair that formed itself from the floor to fit her perfectly. "The day we found the first Keeper ruin. Day 47 of our exploration beyond the Forbidden Zone." The memory came flooding back. They had been following strange energy readings for weeks, pushing deeper into space than any human had ever gone. The Council's warnings about the dangers beyond their borders had seemed foolish then. Humans had always been explorers, always pushed against limits. Then they found the dead world. It had no name in any language, just a series of numbers in their navigation computer. But when they landed, they found structures that defied understanding. Buildings that existed in more dimensions than the eye could see, made from materials that seemed to be solid thought. Chief Petty Officer Choi Jinwoo had been the first to touch one of the strange walls. The moment his bare hand made contact, knowledge flooded into his mind. Not facts or information, but pure understanding. He screamed for 17 minutes before his brain adapted to what he was learning. When he finally stopped screaming, he looked at his crewmates with eyes that held starlight. "They're still here," he had whispered. "The builders. They're waiting for us." That had been the beginning. Over the following days, the crew of the Teguk made contact with beings that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago. The Keepers, as they called themselves, had been watching the younger races of the galaxy, waiting for one that might be ready for their inheritance. Most species, the Keepers explained, thought in straight lines. They saw the universe as a collection of rules to be followed or forces to be conquered. But humans were different. Human minds were chaotic, emotional, creative. They could accept contradictions and find patterns in randomness. Your species asks what if more than what is, the Keepers had told Captain Doyun during one of their first conversations. This makes you very dangerous to established order, but very useful to the universe. The crew spent months learning from the ruins, their minds slowly expanding to accommodate impossible concepts. They learned that consciousness and matter were connected at levels deeper than quantum physics. They discovered that time was not a river flowing in one direction, but an ocean that could be navigated in any direction by those who understood its currents. Most importantly, they learned why the Keepers had left their technology behind. Something is coming, the Keepers had warned. Entities from beyond this galaxy that consume civilizations like fire consumes dry grass. We transcended physical existence to escape them, but younger races will need other tools to survive. Dr. Park Minji pulled herself back from the memories as alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Captain, we have visitors." The main screen showed a massive fleet approaching Earth. Not just Vorthak ships, but vessels from every major species in the Council. The Sithric hegemony's crystal dreadnoughts glowed like stars. The Zilani Collective's bioships writhed through space like living things. Even the mysterious phantom fleet of the Umbral Confederation had emerged from whatever dimension they called home. "How many ships?" Dohyun asked. "Over 10,000, reported Engineer Kim Jae-won from the bridge. "Every major military force in the galaxy. They're demanding our surrender and the transfer of all Keeper technology." Captain Kang Soo-young's voice crackled over the communication system from the Human Defense Fleet. "Teguk, we have 37 ships ready to stand with you. I know the odds don't look good, but we won't let them take you without a fight." Dohyun almost smiled at the courage in her voice. 37 human ships against 10,000 alien vessels. It was exactly the kind of hopeless gesture that made humans special. "Captain Kang, please stand down," he replied. "Your bravery honors us, but this fight isn't what it appears to be." On the lead Vorthak dreadnought, High Archon Velnoth of the Sithric hegemony stood beside Admiral Quextar. The ancient being was older than most civilizations, its crystalline body holding memories of 1,000 conquered worlds. "These humans must be stopped," Velnoth declared, its voice ringing like breaking glass. "They possess technologies that could upset the natural order. Younger species must know their place." Admiral Quextar nodded, still smarting from his earlier encounter with the impossible human ship. "My ships are ready, Archon. One way or another we will bring them to heel." But as the combined fleet moved into attack formation, something unexpected happened. The Teguk didn't prepare for battle. Instead, it began to sing. Not with sound, but with pure thought transmitted across quantum frequencies that touched every mind in the system. The song told the story of the Keepers, of beings who had learned to transcend conflict through understanding. It spoke of technologies that could end hunger, cure disease, and turn weapons into tools of creation. Most importantly, it carried a warning about the coming darkness from beyond the galaxy, and the need for all intelligent species to work together if they hoped to survive. Dr. Park Minji stood at the center of the Teguk's bridge, her hands moving through patterns of light that controlled systems beyond current scientific understanding. Around her, the crew worked in perfect harmony, their enhanced minds connected through quantum consciousness interfaces. "They're not listening," reported Chief Petty Officer Choi, his eyes now permanently changed by his contact with Keeper technology. "The fleet commanders are ordering their attack." Dohyun closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, touching the vast network of consciousness that connected his crew. 200 years of contact with the Keepers had changed them all, making them something more than human while keeping them essentially human at their core. "Then we teach them the hard way," he decided. "Minji, activate the Harmony Protocol. Show them what cooperation looks like when enforced by superior technology." As the alien fleet prepared to open fire, the Teguk began to glow with the same purple-gold light that had marked its return. But this time the light spread outward, touching each attacking ship like gentle fingers. The real demonstration was about to begin. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with angry voices from a dozen different species. Representatives clicked, hissed, and growled their displeasure as they took their seats in the massive circular hall. At the center of it all sat Counselor Yu Hyunwoo, looking very small and very human among the towering aliens around him. High Chancellor Vexmore, a tall insectoid being with crystal-like skin, called the emergency session to order. His voice echoed through translation devices in hundreds of languages. "We are here to address the human violation of council law," he announced. "One of their vessels has demonstrated illegal technology and refused lawful orders from Admiral Quextar." Yu Hyunwoo stood up slowly. "Honored Chancellor, we have no knowledge of this ship. The Taeguk was lost 200 years ago. We assumed all hands were dead." "Dead things do not teleport through space," growled Ambassador Thekrun, the Vorthak representative. His massive form dwarfed the human counselor. "Your species has violated the technology accords. The penalty is severe." Before anyone could respond, the air in the center of the chamber began to shimmer. The same purple-gold light that had appeared in space now manifested in the heart of the council hall. Security forces raised their weapons, but the light simply expanded, forming a perfect circle on the floor. Captain Lee Do-hyun stepped through the light as if walking through a doorway. Behind him came Dr. Park Min-ji and 3 other crew members. They looked completely human, but something in their presence made the alien representatives step back. "Honored council members," Do-hyun said, his voice carrying clearly without amplification. "I am Captain Lee Do-hyun of the UES Taeguk. I come bearing gifts." Chancellor Vexmore's compound eyes focused on the humans. "You dare violate the sanctity of this chamber? Security, arrest them immediately." The security forces moved forward, but their weapons simply stopped working. Energy rifles went dark, plasma cannons powered down, and stun batons became lifeless pieces of metal. The aliens holding them looked at their useless weapons in confusion. "Please," Dr. Park Min-ji said gently. "We're not here to fight. We're here to share what we learned during our long journey." She raised her hand and a small device materialized in her palm. It looked like a sphere of living crystal, pulsing with internal light. The sphere began to project images into the air above the council floor. "This is a matter recompiler," she explained. "It can restructure atomic bonds at the quantum level. Watch." She tossed the sphere toward a section of damaged floor tiles. Where it landed, the broken stone began to reform itself, molecules dancing and reshaping until the floor was perfect again. But that wasn't all. The stone continued to change, becoming first metal, then crystal, then something that looked like living wood. The council chamber fell silent. "Impossible," whispered the Sithric representative, "a being made of what looked like living gas. Matter cannot be changed so easily. The energy requirements alone." Dr. Min-ji smiled. "That's what we thought too, until we learned about zero-point energy extraction. Would you like to see?" Before anyone could object, she produced another device. This one was even smaller, barely the size of a coin. She placed it on the floor and immediately, energy readings throughout the chamber began climbing. "It's drawing power from the quantum vacuum," she explained. "Infinite clean energy from the space between atoms. We can teach you how to build them." Engineer Kim Jae-won, one of the younger crew members, stepped forward. He looked nervous but determined. "Honored representatives, we know our species has been considered primitive, but we learned from teachers who are older than your civilizations. They showed us that technology isn't about forcing the universe to obey, it's about asking it nicely." He demonstrated by simply looking at one of the council's data displays. The screen began showing information it wasn't designed to access, pulling data from systems it had no connection to. "Quantum consciousness interface," Kim explained. "Thought and matter are connected at the deepest level. Human brains, with all our chaos and emotion, are very good at making these connections." Ambassador Thekrun had heard enough. The massive Vorthak stood up, his voice booming through the chamber. "Lies and tricks. No primitive species could develop such technology. You have stolen it from someone else." Captain Do-hyun's expression grew sad. "Admiral Thekrun, you represent a species that has ruled through force for 10,000 years. You cannot imagine that power might come from understanding instead of domination." "Enough," Thekrun roared. He activated his personal communicator. "Enforcer Zixthon, bring your battle group to the council station. Arrest these humans and seize their vessel." Within minutes, 50 Vorthak warships surrounded the council station. Enforcer Zixthon's voice crackled over the communication system. Human vessel Teguk, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Any resistance will result in your complete destruction. Dr. Park Minji looked at Captain Do-hyun with raised eyebrows. He nodded once, almost sadly. Minji, show them what we learned about time. She touched a control that wasn't there a moment before, her fingers dancing through empty air. Outside, the Vorthak fleet suddenly stopped moving. Not slowed down, not disabled, but frozen in time itself. The ships hung motionless in space, their crews trapped in temporal bubbles. They're not harmed, Dr. Minji explained to the stunned council members. They're just paused. They'll be fine in a few hours, but they'll have learned something about the nature of time. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted in languages that translation devices couldn't keep up with. Some demanded the humans be destroyed immediately. Others begged to know how such technology was possible. Chancellor Vexmore raised all four of his arms for silence. When the chamber finally quieted, he looked directly at Captain Do-hyun. What do you want from us? Do-hyun's answer was simple and terrifying. Nothing, Chancellor. We're not here to ask for anything. We're here to tell you that everything is about to change. The galaxy has been playing by the wrong rules for too long. He gestured to his crew and they began to fade away like morning mist. We'll be at Earth preparing. When you're ready to learn instead of rule, we'll be waiting. But understand this, the old ways are ending whether you accept it or not. The humans vanished, leaving behind a chamber full of the galaxy's most powerful beings, all of them afraid for the first time in centuries. Outside, the frozen Vorthak fleet hung in space like a monument to the galaxy's changing times. Ambassador Song Nari, who had been quietly observing from the human section, stood up slowly. Her voice carried clearly in the silent chamber. Honored representatives, I suggest we prepare for a new age, because ready or not, it's coming. The alarm bells rang through the massive Vorthak warship. Admiral Quextar's six eyes focused on the display screen, his scaled hands gripping the command chair. Something impossible was happening in the empty space near the rim sectors. Report, he demanded in his deep, rumbling voice. Sir, we're detecting an energy signature that doesn't match any known technology, his science officer replied, tentacles dancing over the control panel. The readings they're off our scales. Quextar leaned forward. In his 300 years of military service, he had seen every type of ship in the galaxy. The Galactic Council had strict rules about technology. No species was allowed to develop anything beyond their assigned level. Humans, those weak creatures from Earth, were barely allowed simple faster-than-light travel. They certainly couldn't produce energy readings like this. Show me, he ordered. The main screen flickered and displayed the source of the disturbance. Space itself seemed to be tearing open like fabric. Purple and gold light poured out of the rip, creating patterns that hurt to look at. Then slowly a ship emerged. It was human in design, but wrong somehow. The hull was the right shape, but it seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Strange symbols glowed along its sides, pulsing with the same purple-gold light as the tear in space. Run identification scans, Quextar commanded. The results made him stand up from his chair. That's impossible. Sir, the ship is registered as the UES Teguk, but that vessel was lost 200 years ago during the human expansion attempts. Our records show it disappeared beyond the Forbidden Zone. Quextar's mind raced. The Forbidden Zone was where the Council sent ships that tried to explore too far. Nothing ever came back. The humans had learned their lesson after losing several ships, including the Teguk. They had stayed in their assigned sector ever since, like good little subjects. Open communication channels, he ordered. All human ships are required to submit to inspection. The response came immediately, but not through normal communication systems. The voice simply appeared in everyone's minds, clear and calm. This is Captain Lee Do-hyun of the UES Teguk. We request safe passage to Earth. We bring gifts for the galaxy. Quextar felt a chill run down his spine. Mental communication was impossible without special implants. Humans didn't have that technology. They weren't allowed to have it. Human vessel, you will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any deviation from Council protocols will result in your destruction. There was a pause. Then Captain Do-hyun's voice returned, still calm, still somehow speaking directly into their minds. Admiral Quextar, we appreciate your concern, but we must decline. We have been away from home for a very long time. Our families are waiting. You do not have a choice, Quextar snarled. He turned to his weapons officer. Target their engines. Minimal power. We want them alive for questioning. The Vorthak warship's massive plasma cannon swiveled toward the Teguk. Energy built up in the firing chambers, ready to disable the strange human ship. But when the weapons fired, the beams passed harmlessly through empty space. The Teguk was simply gone. Where did they go? Quextar roared. Sir, they're behind us, the tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. Quextar spun around to see the Teguk floating calmly behind his fleet. It hadn't moved around them or through hyperspace. It had simply stopped existing in one place and started existing in another. How did they do that? He whispered. The answer came from Dr. Park Minji, though he didn't know her name yet. Her voice joined Captain Do-hyun's in their minds, warm but carrying an edge of something that might have been pity. You still think in such limited ways, Admiral. Space and time are not walls. They are suggestions. We learned this from very old teachers. Meanwhile, on Earth, Counselor Yu Hyunwoo was having the worst day of his political career. As humanity's representative on the Galactic Council, he spent most of his time apologizing for his species and begging for basic rights. Humans were considered a young, primitive race. They were tolerated, not respected. The call from Admiral Quextar changed everything. Counselor Yu, one of your ships has violated Council space with illegal technology. Explain yourself. Hyunwoo's hands shook as he pulled up Earth's ship registry. Admiral, all our vessels are accounted for. We have no ships in your sector. The UES Teguk? Registration number. Quextar read off a series of numbers that made Hyunwoo's blood run cold. That ship was lost 2 centuries ago, he said quietly. There were no survivors. Well, it's very much alive now, and it's using technology that violates 17 different council regulations. Your people will answer for this. The connection ended, leaving Hyunwoo staring at his reflection in the blank screen. The Teguk was a legend among humans, one of the ships that had tried to push beyond council boundaries during humanity's brief period of rebellion. Captain Do-hyun had been a hero then, leading expeditions to find new worlds where humans could live free from council restrictions. But that was 200 years ago. Everyone on that ship should have been dead for a century and a half. Back in space, the Teguk continued its impossible journey toward Earth. Admiral Quextar had called for reinforcements, but every ship that tried to intercept the human vessel found themselves facing the same problem. The Teguk was never where it appeared to be. Captain Do-hyun stood on his bridge, looking older than his years, but somehow more alive than any human should be. His crew moved around him with smooth efficiency, but they too seemed changed. Their eyes held knowledge that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Park Minji ran her hands over controls that seemed to be made of living light. The technology around them pulsed and flowed, responding to thoughts as much as touch. She looked up at her captain with eyes that had seen impossible things. The Council won't let us reach Earth easily, she said. They're mobilizing their entire fleet. Do-hyun smiled, and for a moment, the expression was both completely human and utterly alien. Let them come. Minji, it's time the galaxy learned what we discovered out there. Time they understood that their rules are about to change forever. The Teguk continued toward Earth, leaving behind a fleet of confused and frightened aliens who were beginning to realize that everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong. The greatest shock was yet to come. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The former Council capital world of Nexus Prime buzzed with activity as beings from hundreds of species worked together in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. Where once the great crystal towers had housed the machinery of oppression, now they gleamed with new purpose as the Academy of Infinite Possibilities. Dr. Park Minji stood on the Academy's highest balcony, watching Vorthak engineers work alongside Sithric artists and human scientists. Below them, students from across the galaxy learned to merge consciousness with technology, creating wonders that the keepers themselves might have admired. The first class graduated yesterday, reported Director Lim Haeun, approaching with a tablet full of remarkable statistics. 17 species represented, all of them successfully interfacing with quantum consciousness systems. Professor Oh Kyung-min says their progress is beyond anything we hoped for. Minji nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. And the resistance? Haeun's mood darkened slightly. Still active in 12 sectors, High Archon Velnoth's faction refuses to accept the new paradigm. They've been gathering support from species that preferred the old hierarchical system. They'll learn, Minji said quietly. One way or another, they all learn eventually. The learning process had not been entirely voluntary. Across the galaxy, worlds that had resisted humanity's offer of cooperation found themselves gently but firmly upgraded. Prison planets became research stations where former inmates worked to solve galactic problems, instead of rotting in cells. Surveillance networks designed to spy on populations transformed into educational systems that helped beings reach their full potential. Most dramatically, weapons factories had become creation centers, turning out tools that could terraform dead worlds, cure genetic diseases, and connect distant civilizations through instantaneous communication networks. Ambassador First Class Shin. Yuna materialized beside them through one of the new quantum doorways that had replaced much of the galaxy's transportation infrastructure. Her role as humanity's chief diplomat to the reformed galactic government kept her constantly traveling between worlds. "Captain Do-hyun wants to see you both," she said. "We've detected the first signs." The words sent chills through both women. For months, the enhanced humans had been preparing the galaxy for the threat the Keepers had warned about. Now it seemed their preparations would be tested sooner than expected. They found Captain Do-hyun in the Academy's central observatory, standing before a massive holographic display that showed the galaxy from edge to edge. Chief Petty Officer Choi Jin-woo worked at a console beside him, his enhanced eyes processing data streams that would have overwhelmed unaugmented minds. "Show them," Do-hyun said simply. The display zoomed to the galaxy's outer rim, where space itself seemed to be wrong. Stars were going out in a pattern that suggested intelligence, not natural phenomena. Entire solar systems had simply vanished, leaving behind voids that hurt to look at. "The Devourers," Professor Ok Youngmin said from his position at another console. "That's what the Keepers called them. Entities from beyond our reality that consume consciousness itself. They don't just destroy civilizations, they erase them from ever having existed." Engineer Kim Jae-won looked up from his analysis station. "At their current rate of approach, they'll reach populated systems within 2 years, maybe less if they accelerate." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This was why the Keepers had transcended physical existence. This was the ultimate test that no previous galactic civilization had passed. "But we're not previous civilizations," Captain Do-hyun said, reading the fear in their faces. "We have advantages the others didn't." He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed the incredible changes that had swept across the galaxy in just 6 months. Worlds that had been barren for millennia now bloomed with engineered life. Species that had warred for thousands of years worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Most importantly, nearly every intelligent being in the galaxy was now connected through quantum consciousness networks, allowing them to share thoughts, knowledge, and capabilities instantaneously across impossible distances. The Keepers faced the Devourers as individual species, Do-hyun explained. Each civilization fought alone, even when they tried to cooperate. But we've done something they never managed. We've made the entire galaxy into a single unified mind, while preserving the individuality that makes each species special. Admiral Quextar's voice came through the communication system, transmitted from his flagship, which was now leading the construction of massive defense platforms throughout the Outer Rim. "Captain Do-hyun, my engineering teams report the first line of deterrent systems will be complete within 8 months. The Sithric Collective has agreed to provide crystal matrix components, and even the Phantom Fleet has contributed their dimensional manipulation technology." It was a miracle of cooperation that would have been impossible under the Council's old system. Former enemies worked together because the alternative was extinction for everyone. But the real miracle was happening on millions of worlds across the galaxy. Humans, with their chaotic creativity and emotional intelligence, had become teachers to species that had never imagined such possibilities. Forthak warriors learned to channel their aggression into protective instincts that safeguarded entire civilizations. Sithric artists discovered that beauty could be a weapon against despair, more powerful than any physical force. High Archon Velnoth appeared in the observatory through a quantum projection, his crystalline form showing signs of the changes that had swept through even the most resistant populations. "Human Captain," he said, and the formal hostility was gone from his voice. "My people have been proud for too long. We resisted your teachings because we feared they would diminish us. We were wrong." "Everyone was wrong about something, Archon," Do-hyun replied gently. That's why we work together now. Our mistakes make us stronger when we share them instead of hiding them. Dr. Park Minji stepped forward, her enhanced senses already reaching out to touch the quantum consciousness network that now connected most of the galaxy's inhabitants. The Devourers consume consciousness by isolating it, turning beings against each other until they destroy themselves from within, she explained. But what we've built here, this is something they've never encountered before. A galaxy-wide mind that gets stronger through diversity instead of weaker. Science Officer Bei Jiwan made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about the approaching threat. Captain, I'm detecting something in the quantum foam at the edge of Devourer space. It's recognition. They've noticed that something is different about our galaxy. They're slowing down, studying us. The display showed the terrifying entities at the galaxy's edge, vast intelligences that existed partially outside normal spacetime. For the first time since their approach had begun, they had stopped advancing and were observing the strange new phenomenon that was the transformed Milky Way. They're confused, Professor O realized with growing excitement. They're used to finding isolated, competing civilizations. They don't know what to make of a unified galactic consciousness that's still made up of diverse, independent minds. Captain Do-hyun smiled, and the expression carried hope that spread through the quantum network to every connected mind in the galaxy. Then we have time to show them something new, he said. The Keepers escaped the Devourers by transcending physical existence. But maybe there's another way. Maybe instead of running or fighting, we can teach them what we've learned about cooperation. It was an insane idea, attempting to communicate with entities that had consumed countless civilizations, but it was also essentially human, the kind of impossible, chaotic, emotionally driven decision that had made humanity perfect partners for Keeper technology. Director Lim Hyein looked at the display showing the paused Devourers, and then at the bustling academy below, where former enemies now worked as friends. Well, she said with a very human shrug, we've already done the impossible once. Why not try for twice? As if in response to her words, the quantum consciousness network that connected the galaxy began to sing, billions of minds from hundreds of species joining, together in a harmony that reached out beyond the stars themselves. The Devourers were listening. And for the first time in their existence, they were curious instead of hungry. The galaxy's greatest test was about to begin, but they would face it as one people under countless skies, united by the chaotic wisdom of humanity and the infinite possibilities they had taught each other to imagine.